Hello and welcome to Bust or Trust, a kids' mystery podcast. I'm Tiernan.
And I'm Athena. Bust or Trust is the podcast where we unravel the world's greatest mysteries with help from you, our chief detectives.
We present all the best evidence and then ask you to decide. Which team are you on?
Are you a myth buster like me?
Or are you a myth truster like me? We look into all sorts of strange stories from around the world. No mystery is too big for us. Like, why is it called your bottom when it's in the middle of your body?
Well, because if your feet were your bottom, then you'd have to walk on your bottom, and that wouldn't be fun.
That's a good point. And sitting would be rubbish if it was actually standing. Anyway, we tell you at the end of the show just how to get in touch, so you can let us know if you're on Team Buster or the best one, Team Truster.
So, chief detectives, get ready to take notes and start putting together your case, while we have a quick word with the grown-ups. Hello there, mystery fans. Did you know that we depend on your support to keep making Bust or Trust?
If you subscribe and support Bust or Trust on Patreon or Apple Podcasts, you'll get access to weekly subscriber bonus episodes with extra evidence, ad-free listening, and early access to all our episodes.
And you'll get our weekly newsletter full of fun facts, book recommendations, fun new words, and a monthly colouring poster to print at home, featuring some of the weirdest and wildest mysteries we've investigated.
To support the show and get access to all these great goodies, just click subscribe in Apple Podcasts, subscribe to Patreon via Spotify, or visit patreon.com/Bust or Trust podcast. Or for more information, visit our website at bustortrust.com.
The case.
Hello? What on earth? What is that? A wooden lump? On wheels?
I'm a horse, actually, and a magnificent gift.
Tiernan, what are you doing inside a wooden hippo?
Ow! How did you know it was me?
Because you spoke to me and said, I'm a horse, actually. And also because no one else is that bad at crafts.
It definitely looks like a horse, not a hippo. And anyway, you let me in, so it worked. That was exactly the mistake the ancient Trojans made when the Achaean soldiers hid inside a giant wooden horse and pretended to be a gift, which pretty much won them the Trojan War.
That is, if it actually happened. The Trojan War is a legendary 10-year battle from Greek mythology, but no one is quite sure if it actually happened or if it was all made up.
I think the fact my wooden horse tricked you means it definitely did happen.
It didn't trick me. And anyway, what exactly are we going to do with a large wooden avocado?
Avocado? How rude. Avocados don't have manes and tails.
Exactly. Neither does that.
Fine. I'll wheel it out of the way while you tell the chief detectives all about this week's case.
Push it even further away, Tiernan. According to the story, the Trojan War took place somewhere in the 12th or 13th century BCE. It's said to have all begun when Paris, the Prince of Troy, took Helen, the most beautiful woman in the world, away from her husband, Menelaus, the king of Sparta. This sparked a huge war between the Achaeans, a group of people from ancient Greece, and the Trojans. The Trojans were people from an ancient city called Troy. Troy doesn't exist anymore, but it's believed to have been located in what is now Turkey. The Trojan War lasted 10 long years, and it's one of the most important events in Greek mythology.
The Trojan War features in well-known Greek literature, with the most famous being the Iliad. The Iliad is one of two epic poems about the Trojan War written by the poet known as Homer. It's a long poem about the fight between two important people, King Agamemnon, the leader of the Greek army, and Achilles, a great warrior. Achilles was super strong and couldn't be hurt anywhere except for his heel. The story happens during the last few days of the Trojan War. And Homer wrote another epic poem called the Odyssey. That's all about Odysseus, a clever Greek hero, and his long, tricky journey home after the fall of Troy and the end of the Trojan War. The Trojan War is also mentioned in a number of other Greek poems. One of the most exciting parts is about the Trojan horse. The Greeks built a giant wooden horse and hid soldiers inside it. The Trojans thought it was a gift and brought it into their city, but during the night, the Greek soldiers snuck out of the horse and won the war. But still, no one knows if the Trojan War actually happened or if it's just a legend.
Some experts think the Trojan War might not have been one long battle, but a lot of smaller fights where the ancient Greeks tried to take over the city of Troy. They say it would have been too hard for a war to last 10 whole years, but others think there was evidence the war really happened, such as ruins and artefacts that archaeologists have discovered where the city of Troy might have stood. As you can imagine, the Trojan War has influenced many things like famous paintings, pottery, sculptures, music, stories, movies, operas, comics, and even video games.
That's a lot of stuff.
Exactly. So, whether it's real or not, it will always be regarded as one of the greatest epic tales.
So this week, Chief Detectives, you've got to decide if you think the Trojan War really happened or not.
OK then, Tiernan, give us the evidence and no horsing around. Or should I say, avocado in?
Well, maybe I shouldn't have painted my horse green. I get it. Chief Detectives, the first piece of evidence is going to give Team Buster a real head Achaeans.
First piece of evidence.
The first piece of evidence that proves the Trojan War really did happen is the epic poetry of Homer.
Don't!
No, Athena, not that Homer. Long before the television show The Simpsons, the most famous Homer in the world was an ancient Greek poet from the 8th century BCE. That's over 2,000 years ago. Homer is one of the most influential authors in the world, and his epic poems, the Iliad and the Odyssey, are considered to be two of the most important works in ancient Greek writing, making him one of the most notable authors ever.
Wow, that is pretty important.
Yes, it is. Homer's two bits of writing are very important because they both tell stories about the Trojan War. The Iliad covers the last 4 days and 2 nights of the war, while the Odyssey follows one of the war's heroes after it's ended. Both poems contain lots of details about the Trojan War too, including why it started, which was because Helen of Sparta ran away with the Prince of Troy. This enraged the king of Sparta, and Agamemnon, a great commander of Achaean soldiers, assembled an army and sent 1,186 ships to attack Troy. That's how it all began, and why Helen of Troy was said to have been the face that launched 1,000 ships. Homer wrote about the duel between the king of Sparta and Paris, and how the winner would be declared as the victor of everything. Paris lost, but was saved by Aphrodite, the goddess of love. And then the Iliad tells of the many fights between the Achaeans and the Trojans, both sides winning some battles and losing others. Then, in the poem The Odyssey, we learn from the opening sentence that the city of Troy fell at the hands of Achaean heroes like Odysseus. It says, "Tell me, O Muse, of that ingenious hero who travelled far and wide after he had sacked the famous town of Troy." We also learn in the rest of the poem that the Trojan War lasted for 10 whole years.
That is very interesting, and they are such brilliant epic poems with excellent adventures in them. But they aren't very realistic. I mean, not only do the Greek gods get involved all the time, but in the Odyssey, there's also a number of mythical creatures, like Medusa, a woman with snakes for hair, and the Cyclops, a huge giant with only one eye. It's hard to take Homer's writing seriously as a historical account when it's got a massive Cyclops in it.
Yeah, but Homer had to make the story fun, didn't he? Experts who've studied the texts say that many of the creatures are metaphors for events and feelings that people had at the time. A metaphor is when a writer uses something as a symbol for something else. So, for example, in the Odyssey, the Cyclops is angry about new people arriving on his island. It's said that Homer created him to represent the Achaeans' fear of people from other places. Cyclops' one eye shows that he only sees things in one way, meaning that he's not open to new ideas or meeting new people.
OK, that does show just how clever Homer's writing was. But doesn't that also mean the whole Trojan War could be a metaphor for something else? And it's also important to tell the chief detectives that to this day, no one really knows who Homer was. He might have been one man or several different poets working together. Some people believe Homer was a woman, while ancient writers thought that maybe the poet was a prisoner because the word homeros was ancient Greek for hostage. So, while the Iliad and Odyssey are said to have been written by Homer, no one actually knows for sure, which makes it tricky to know whether his or her or their writing says anything real about the Trojan War at all.
I love the idea that there could be loads of Homers. I'm not sure how it would work with who gets to open letters addressed to Homer or who gets to have a passport with Homer on it, though. But even if we don't know who Homer is, there's other evidence that shows the 10-year Battle of Troy definitely happened.
Second piece of evidence.
The second piece of evidence is that well-known historians are confident they can pinpoint when the Trojan War might have happened in history. Are you ready for a mega famous ancient Greek person who believed the Trojan War happened countdown?
That is a very long title.
Can you think of a better one?
Nope. Okay, go for it.
Okay. Famous ancient Greek person who believed the Trojan War happened, number 1.
I thought Homer was the first famous ancient Greek person we've mentioned.
Oh yeah, good point. Well, maybe he was too famous to take part. You know, like he was probably on the judging panel to decide about the other ones. Anyway, here's Herodotus. Herodotus was an ancient Greek historian and geographer, which means he studied the earth and how science and nature works. He's known as the father of history because of his historical discoveries. Herodotus was born over 500 years after Homer and was certain that the Trojan War had happened. He travelled a lot around Egypt and the Middle East and insisted that he learned the proper story of the Trojan War from the people there. Herodotus believed it took place 800 years before he was born. He also shared an interesting twist about Helen, the woman said to have caused the war. Herodotus believed that Helen had actually been hiding in Egypt the entire time. However, the Greek soldiers didn't know this and kept attacking Troy because they believed false stories that Helen was inside the city. They never checked to see if those stories were true, leading to years of fighting over a misunderstanding. In at number 2 on the famous ancient Greek person who believed the Trojan War happened countdown, it's Eratosthenes.
Another reason Homer couldn't be on this list. His name is far too easy to say.
That is so true. So the ancient Greek mathematician Eratosthenes was even more specific and said that the Trojan War happened around the years 1184 to 1183 BCE. He was the first person ever to discover the distance around the Earth, so clearly very clever. Other Greek historians also believed the Trojan War was real, but they questioned some parts of the story. For example, famous ancient Greek person who believed that, yeah, you get it by now, Thucydides didn't think it was possible that 1,186 ships were sent to Troy, as some stories claimed. Meanwhile, last but certainly not leastest, Dio Chrysostom had a very different view. He believed the Trojans actually won the war and that the Greeks had been hiding the truth ever since to make themselves look better.
Okay, but many modern historians aren't anywhere near as sure as the ancient Greek historians were. Homer's poems were so popular and detailed that it made people believe the war must have happened, but there's really not very much evidence that it did. And again, I think it would have been very unusual for a battle like the one described to last for 10 years. That's a really long time, and the area of Troy as described by Homer wasn't very big. And it wouldn't have taken that long for a huge Greek army to win the war. Experts think it's more likely that Homer took several battles from the late Bronze Age, which was around 400 years before the Iliad was written. One of those battles was very likely a Greek expedition to Troy, but it's very unlikely that it happened quite how Homer described it. Then he mixed it with details from closer to when Homer was said to have lived, such as the descriptions of the temples to the gods. And so it seems very likely his poems and the Trojan War were just all made up, or at least influenced by lots of different events to help him tell a really epic tale.
Wow, well if Homer did make it all up, he must have been such a good writer, because as you'll see in the last piece of evidence, some of his writings definitely became real.
Third piece of evidence.
In 1822, a Scottish journalist called Charles Maclaren discovered a mound in the Turkish area of Hisarlik, which he believed was the possible site of the city of Troy as described by Homer. 20 years later, an English amateur archaeologist called Frank Calvert did several archaeology digs in the area and found a lot of ancient gold and copper artefacts. Then in 1868, an amateur archaeologist and businessman called Heinrich Schliemann discovered what he thought was once the real city of Troy. Heinrich had dreamed of finding it ever since he read the Iliad at the age of 7, and many years later he was advised by Frank Calvert to explore this mound in Hisarlik. So he did, and there he discovered a huge amount of treasure from shields and cauldrons to gold cups, rings and silver knives. He called it Priam's treasure, believing it to have all been owned by King Priam, the last king of Troy during the Trojan War.
Oh, it must have been amazing to find all that treasure. But Heinrich Schliemann was criticised for telling quite a few fibs about what he found, which experts now say was from many different eras and all long before King Priam was said to exist. Not only that, but Schliemann smuggled all his findings out of Turkey, which made the government ban him from ever doing archaeological digs there again.
But that doesn't mean Hisarlik wasn't at one point Troy. In fact, an archaeologist named Manfred Kaufmann, working in the 1990s, discovered that the area was much larger than the small town where Schliemann had found artefacts. Beneath it, Kaufmann discovered the remains of a much larger city. He suggested that these ruins show there were several versions of Troy, including one that had clearly been destroyed by an earthquake, and another that was definitely destroyed in battle. Possibly the Trojan War. It looks as though the entire area was at one point surrounded by huge walls, something that Homer described in the Iliad.
Archaeology is amazing, and it's incredible they were able to find the city that could have been Troy. Just because the city might have been real, it doesn't mean it was part of a 10-year war, or that the reasons for its destruction in battle were the same as Homer described. The problem with history is that it's really impossible to tell what actually happened unless a lot of evidence is found, and most modern historians are very certain there was no Trojan War.
I'm still convinced there was, and maybe so many things were destroyed during the battle that there's nothing left to find from it.
Maybe, but there's one thing that makes me certain it couldn't have happened.
What's that?
Just how did the Trojan War go on for 10 years? Wouldn't they all have just gotten bored?
I will defeat you.
No, I will defeat you.
Oh yeah? Well, have at thee.
No, you have at thee. Wait a second.
Is this a trick?
Oh, no, I hadn't thought of that. But no, I just wondered if you wanted to break for lunch.
What's the time?
It's nearly 2 p.m.
Have we been fighting for that long? Well, you're right. I could do with a sandwich.
Meet you back here in half an hour.
See you then. Good sandwich?
Oh, great, thanks.
Good. Now have at thee again.
No, have at thee.
Hold on.
What is it?
My arm is really starting to hurt from all this sword swinging.
Oh, yes, mine too. I'm getting so tired as well.
Same. Start again tomorrow?
Perfect. What time?
9 a.m?
Very civilized. See you then.
Good morning. Good sleep?
Morning. Yes, thank you. Now, have at thee.
No, you have at thee.
Excuse me.
Yes?
Why are we fighting again exactly?
Oh, do you know what? I honestly can't remember.
Me either. And it's taken up all of my time. I've got loads of things I want to do, but we just keep fighting.
Oh, me too. There's a great film out at the moment I'm dying to see.
Shall we just, call it quits?
Yeah, I guess so. That would be nice, wouldn't it?
Oh, yes, it would. You can say you won if you like. I really don't mind.
Oh, how kind of you.
Oh, I'll be off then.
See you. Wait!
Oh, no, it's not a trick, is it?
No, I just wondered if you fancied hanging out sometime.
Ooh, might be a bit tricky as we're from different sides.
Oh, yeah. Such a shame. This has been fun.
Yeah, well, fingers crossed for another war then. Bye-bye.
Cheerio. Oh, so hard to make friends in this business.
Yeah, long wars, they sound hard.
So do short wars. I think it's best to avoid all of them.
Good advice. You know who's always on our side, though? That's right, the chief detectives. Now it's time for you to decide. Did the Trojan War really happen or not?
Time to recap the evidence.
Evidence recap.
The first piece of evidence is that the famous ancient Greek poet Homer described the Trojan War in both of his epic tales, the Iliad and the Odyssey. There are details on how the Trojan War started and ended, along with many of the battles that took place during the 10 years it was said to have taken.
But Homer's stories also contain lots of gods and mythical creatures, so they don't sound very real.
The second piece of evidence is that many ancient Greek historians believed the Trojan War happened and thought they were able to pinpoint exactly when in history it took place.
But many modern historians disagree and say that Homer's writings about the Trojan War are probably based on several real events, like other battles that happened during the late Bronze Age. But it would have been very unlikely for a 10-year war to actually happen.
The last piece of evidence is the discovery of ancient Troy in Hisarlik, Turkey. And an archaeologist called Heinrich Schliemann found many artefacts there that he said were from the Trojan king.
But Schliemann was thought to have been a big fibber about his finds. And even if Hisarlik was once the great ancient city of Troy, there is still no proof the Trojan War happened.
So now we're handing it over to you, Chief Detectives.
What do you think? Are you a Trojan War mythbuster?
Or a Trojan War myth truster? Get in touch and let us know your thoughts, and most importantly, which side you're on. The victor of this legendary case is definitely Team Truster.
I'm not even sure that any warring happened here in the first place because of how clearly this case goes to Team Buster. Send us your voice notes with an explanation of why you're a myth truster or myth buster when it comes to whether the Trojan War actually happened or not.
All you have to do is ask your grown-ups to help you email us your voice notes or thoughts to hello@bustortrust.com.
Tell us your name, age, what you think all the evidence means, and please make sure your grown-ups give us permission to use your voice notes or emails in our next episode.
You can also send us a question on Spotify Q&A, but please get permission from your parents and don't include any personal details so that we can publish them safely. We won't always be able to use all of them.
But we do love to hear them, and here are some thoughts from you lot, our chief detectives, on the last few episodes.
Love Tay Tay Forever has sent us an Apple Podcast review saying, "The Bermuda Triangle, always a buster. Sorry, Tiernan, love your podcast. I listen to it every day and please do one on aliens." Tay Tay Forever, thanks so much for listening to the show. I understand if you're a buster on some episodes, but we have done several on aliens. We've done quite a few. Listen to the Kelly Hopkinsville trial one or the Pascagoula abduction. Do check those ones out, and I'm sure there'll be many more because aliens are definitely real and we have to keep talking about them.
Crocodile Pants has left an Apple review. I think it's really good because you can really understand and it tells you facts that everyone can understand. It tells stuff in a fun way. Sometimes it's a bit spooky though. We try not to be spooky. We're going to try to be less spooky, aren't we, Tiernan?
Boo. Okay, maybe a little bit less spooky. Because I Am Wi-Fi has left us an Apple Podcast review saying, "I love this podcast and I'm a truster for the ghosts of the theatre." Yeah, that's right, because there are ghosts on the theatre. And if you are Wi-Fi, I guess you have a lot of knowledge. You've probably got all the Wi-Fi knowledge. So that's some great evidence checking there. Thank you.
I Love Gummy Bears left an Apple review. Great for everyone, everywhere.
That's right. I think, yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Him has left us a message on the Spotify Q&A on our episode about Montezuma's treasure saying, "Trust. First I was Buster until the last evidence. Truster for the win. Yeah, you came to the right team in the end, and that's what counts."
Nelson left a comment on our Spotify Q&A after listening to the episode about the Belmez faces. "Hi guys, I'm a truster on the Belmez faces. Why? Because why would there be different faces and skeletons from the 13th century? I don't know, actually. That's a good question. I'm still on Team Buster though. You've not convinced me yet." Joe commented on our Spotify Q&A after the episode on Montezuma's treasure. "I'm not sure if I'm a buster or truster, but I love this podcast. Joe, I am sure you are a fantastic chief detective and that's all that matters."
Shark Charmer left us a message on Spotify Q&A about our episode on the crystal skulls, saying, "I'm a trustee because I saw pictures of them." Whoa, you've seen pictures of them? If only there was a way we could have done that on the podcast. How do we get pictures on the podcast, Athena? Is it even possible?
It might be in the future.
One day. Colton has left us a message on Spotify Q&A about our episode on the Cahokia light, saying, "Hi, this is Colton. I'm a truster because my mum saw a light like this down a haunted road when she was with friends. I love this podcast. #truster. Yes, Colton, there we go. We've got witness evidence right there. Colton's mum has seen a very similar light to the Cahokia light.
Brilliant comments as always. I think we have the greatest listeners.
Are the very best listeners in the world. And if you enjoyed the show, please follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify or Amazon Music, or wherever you listen to your podcasts for more great episodes.
We love to hear what you think. So please do rate and review us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It helps more detectives find Bust or Trust. And of course, we'll read out some of your comments on the show.
Plus, if you pay to subscribe to Bust or Trust on Apple Podcasts or our patreon.com/Bust or Trust page, then you get to hear all of our bonus episodes, get our weekly newsletter, monthly colouring sheets, and we'll also give you a shout out on the show too.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time for more Bust or Trust.
And go!
Oh, please don't throw potatoes all over the floor, Tiernan.
But I'm trying to see if I could be like Helen of Troy and start a 10-year war.
Okay, I don't mean to be rude, Tiernan, but you're definitely not the most beautiful woman in the world.
No offence taken. I'm not trying to be Helen of Troy. I'm just trying to be like her, which is why I'm seeing if my face can launch 1,000 chips.
If you ruin all of our snacks, then I'll definitely declare battle. And it'll be over much quicker than the Trojan War.
Ooh, I'll leave it then.